In a modern world, there's not too many times that we recommend firing into a moving car, but this is one of them. Hi friends, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from Sacramento, California.
Wilderness Tactical has been around for longer than the gun you're carrying has been, and they have been making high quality products for concealed carriers for literally decades. I wear their low pro belt every year. The webbing is the best in the industry, and I won't wear anything else. If you're looking for a good CCW belt, check them out.
Officers were called earlier in the morning to a carjacking. A woman had gone and started her car. You can see the badge cam here was from February. Gone back in the house because she forgot something, left the car running, which was a mistake. When she came back out, a dude had jumped in the driver's seat of her car. She then grabbed the car door to try to stop him from stealing her car. He dragged her down the block a little ways. Now we have that is a carjacking. Then this officer has then found that car parked on the roadside. Let's listen in on the badge cams from here.
Hey, let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. Now, step out. Now.
Come in.
Yeah. Do not step yet. Hold up. Do not move. Put your hand right. Bravo 28. Can you serve me another unit? At me. Hey. Huh? Stay right where you're at. You understand? Do not move.
I'm coming.
Do not move.
I'm coming.
Do not move.
Okay.
Do not move. I'm going to tase you. I'm going to tase you. I'm going to tase you.
Come out.
I'm out with the suspect on the 215. Do not move. I'm going to tase you right now.
Let me come out.
No, I'm going to tase you. Stay right where you're at. Do not move. If you move, I tase.
Hold on.
Do not move.
Hold on, wait. I'm about to sit down.
It looks like he's actually going to map a Candelier and baseball.
Do not
alley.
move. If you move, I'm tasing you. Let me see your hands.
They
Put
right
your
here.
hands. I swear, if you move, I tase.
They're
You
right
understand?
here. I'm coming out.
I'll tell you when to step out. I will tell you when to step out. If you
coming
move,
out.
I tase you.
I'm coming out.
I will tell you when to step out. Do not start this car.
I'm not. I'm trying to move back right here.
Do not start this car. Do not start it. You hear those cars? Do not fucking move. I'm going to tase you right now.
I'm done. I'm done.
Do not move.
Damn.
Do not fucking move this car.
28, where you at?
Do not move this car.
Can you come out?
No.
Can I come out, please?
No, you cannot come out.
Why not?
Because I said so. Turn off this car.
Baseball alley and Candelier.
Turn off this car.
Can I please go?
No, do not fucking move this car.
Why not?
Because I said.
The one officer who was trapped between his door and the cruiser had at least a fairly significant leg injury. He did make a full recovery. All those shots that the officers took, our carjacker reported to a hospital a while later with a single gunshot wound to the abdomen. He is facing a number of aggravated assault against a police officer charges as well as the carjacking charge. You know, this is one of those odd situations that you're like, you know, you can't plan for this. You can't really drill for it. You just got to take it as it comes. And that's what the lessons are going to reflect. So I guess my first thought on this one is the officer comes up and sees the car just kind of parked on the roadside. And it feels pretty nonchalant to me to show up and not have anybody else with him and not have multiple cars at a suspect vehicle from a carjacking.
Yeah, and this is going to be kind of a running theme. This video might get a little bit repetitive. So if this is you, if you're an officer now watching this in training, if this is you, and it doesn't appear the car is on or running or going anywhere, I understand maybe getting a little close to see if it's occupied or not before you do anything. That makes sense to me. Once you've determined it's occupied, I think the course of action here should have been to go back to your car, call for several more units, and get this car disabled by blocking it in with patrol cars. And then we wake up old boy who's inside of the carjacking. And that prevents any of this, him driving away and injuring the other officer, all that stuff. So I'm not going to give these guys too hard of a time, but if you're watching this, you've now had that mental rep. So if you find yourself in this situation, and this is not that uncommon to find a recovered stolen that's occupied, and the person's not going anywhere, think about getting help, think about disabling the car. If you're in Yavapai County, Arizona, and there is no backup for 45 minutes and you have to deal with it, consider having a rat trap spike strip to put underneath that rear tire. So if it does go bad and he drives off, well, at least he'll have one tire that isn't operable and so on. And so you get the idea. But then we get to this point now where he's going inside the car after this guy. I think it's ill-advised. I would have waited till backup, even if you haven't disabled the car. But what we're dealing with here, John, is someone who is feigning I'm sleepy or I'm drunk or high or whatever. This guy isn't any of those things. He's just pretending to not understand so that he can give his brain some time to think about, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to escape? How am I going to get away from this officer? So he's just sort of pretending to be, you know, he's playing dumb, if you will.
Absolutely is. And I want to say here, you know, the officer is going to end up getting his taser out to tase a guy. And we've seen this so many times in these enclosed spaces. First of all, the taser's not going to work. You notice the guy's got way too much clothes on for a taser to work in this particular case. Number two, inside that enclosed environment, what are you going to end up doing with this guy? What we're really trying to do here is simply pain compliance. This is kind of the tailor-made spot for an OC spray. And I get it that you're like, well, I don't want to contaminate the inside of somebody else's car. But guess what? That car is going to a detail shop anyways. And so this is why I think OC spray should be far more common in law enforcement circles than it is, because would be a much better tool here than the taser.
I think it's pretty common that officers around the United States anyway, I don't know about anywhere else, it's pretty common to carry OC spray. Usually they carry a rather oversized OC spray on their duty belt. I think the problem is that the taser has sort of become this super cool thing to use, and everyone seems to want to use the taser over the pepper spray. The pepper spray is remarkably effective. Now there are people, as we've said before, who don't, you know, they can just sort of rub their eyes and go, ow, that hurts, and continue fighting. But most people do not do that. Most people seize up. He would have been unable to fight back. He would have been unable to resist and unable to drive. Now, I know there'll be some people saying, well, if he drives away and he's disabled, then he's going to have an accident. I mean, I guess that's an argument, but I really like OC here for all the reasons we just talked about.
Yeah, and listen, the taser, inside of its use case, inside of its envelope of usefulness, is 100% effective and it's very useful. But inside of a vehicle like this, really not useful. And so listen, know what tools you have at your disposal. And again, you know, he's sitting here arguing with this guy, don't get in the driver's seat. Okay, fine. And if you've never tried to pull somebody out of a car who doesn't want to come out of a car, good luck. Now, the second officer shows up, Mike, and I don't know why he shows up in the space that he does. Instead of coming straight into the grill on this guy, especially as you see that car start moving, because the offset here put the first officer's life in pretty incredible jeopardy. He could have been crushed to death here easily.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things that hopefully everyone sees this video to learn a lesson, because I think a lot of officers, myself included, might have considered coming in at that angle, stopping to give yourself some distance and some cover or whatever. But if you have an officer actively fighting with someone inside the car like this, I think the move, so your mental rep for today, the most important one is use your patrol cruiser to pin that car, at least to pin it from going forward. You can't keep it from going backwards, but at least pin it from going forward, and that way you prevent what we see happening here. And I think in the moment, perhaps the responding officer didn't perceive this guy was actually, the car was actually moving. He might have thought, well, he's just fighting with this guy, the car's off or the car's in park. And so that's why he didn't perceive the need to do that. But I think just to be on the safe side, if you're watching this, that's the move. If you got someone that your fellow officers trying to get out of the car, consider coming in and pinning that car. And if not, get your car far enough out of the way that it doesn't become a pinch point like we saw in this video.
Yeah, and you notice how the pinch points show up here, because he's going to accelerate past the second officer into the third officer. And then, man, thank God that the second officer got out of the way and got away from his patrol cruiser, because this guy came right back in. And you know, a car is absolutely a deadly threat, and this could have killed two of the officers easily in this particular one. So just because the guy doesn't have a gun on him, when you're talking about here, hey man, this guy is armed with a car, you want to be cautious of that, because this is absolutely a deadly threat to these officers.
100%. And I think if we were to rewind it a little bit and you watch where the officer was, the officer from the car we're looking at, if you see where he is when this guy initiates that backing up maneuver, I could very easily argue for attempted murder, because that officer was still in that space when he decided to back up. So this guy is clearly extremely dangerous, and he needs to be stopped. So I think, honestly, you know, the idea that there's, you know, policies and rules against shooting into a moving car, well, there's exceptions to every rule, and this is the exception to that rule. I think because of the glass, as we discussed, the glass being in between, you know, the bullet and the bad guy, caused enough of those rounds to, either that or poor marksmanship, I don't know, but caused enough of the rounds to do goofy stuff inside the car, so he wasn't actually disabled, which is unfortunate, because we see what happens.
Yeah, and listen, I agree with, as a general rule, not shooting into a moving car, but there are exceptions to that. And this, you know, in the beginning here, I think is one of those exceptions. Now, the second officer, man, I just want to stop here for a minute and say, this is why we say, hey, your default play here should be to use that cruiser to get in front, to get to a spot where the cruiser protects you instead of harms you. And that door can be a harm to you, and the door, if it's got ballistic protection, is a protection to you against bullets, but not against cars. And so when you put yourself offset from a suspect, this kind of stuff can happen and could have had life-altering consequences for this officer. Yeah,
and the idea that being inside your car door really is potentially a very dangerous place to be. And this isn't the first time, nor is it the last time, that we'll see a perpetrator use a car to you know, and rip a door off a police car or a third party's car or whatever. So if you're in this position, you just owe it to yourself to do your best to recognize that's what's happening. You know, it takes, human performance dictates, it takes a second for your brain to orient itself to what it's looking at. And so he's looking at this, and I think, I don't know that he had enough time to figure that out, but if the car is moving forward and you're in this position, don't get out of your car. Just move your car, stay in your car until the person's cleared past you or whatever, because there's, you know, as we discussed, this guy could have easily lost a big part of his leg as a result of this. Thank God he didn't. But be cognizant of that. Being in that pinch point inside the door frame in a situation like this can be very dangerous. So keep that in mind and take it into consideration when you're responding to something like this.
And listen, these shots, I think, are 100% justified. I have zero problems with the officer firing his gun at this particular point, because the guy has just assaulted him with a deadly weapon, the car, and just caused him serious injury to his leg. And there are plenty of other officers around. The guy's reversing now and endangering them. Of course, you got to think about backstop. The third officer at least was like, hey, watch the crossfire. I think that that's important. But the other thing here is, you know, misses don't end gunfights, right? This guy's a deadly threat. And glass does weird things to bullets. We know that for sure. But even injured, man, this is why grip sights and trigger are so important, because this guy continues to be a deadly threat because they didn't get a fight-stopping hit on him.
Yeah, and again, this is a little far afield if I'm honest, but this is a good case for a shotgun. The reason that officers should have shotguns available to them is I firmly believe that a couple rounds of buckshot or a couple of slugs would end this very quickly, and that window would have been a lot less of a factor with a bigger projectile, or with, you know, 9.32 caliber projectiles going forward instead of just one 9mm or whatever he had. that. It appeared initially there, that freeze grab, that his grip looked good, the angle of his gun looked good, so there's no accounting for why that happened in that way. But again, if you're talking about a mental rep, this is a good one to have, to realize that, I'm blazing away with my 9mm with 17 rounds in it, plus one in the chamber through this window, and guess what? It wasn't enough. So consider a shotgun, consider an AR in a situation like this, potentially, to help end that threat in a way that your pistol's just not going to.
Yeah, amen. And I also want to say here at this particular incident, in this instance, I think that the officer can certainly articulate why he fired here, and that we have a fleeing felon who's committed aggravated assault, committed violent carjacking, and so I think legally speaking, he's covered here. I will say I don't know that it was wise or smart to take these shots, because again, what is your hope here? Is your hope to continue to incapacitate? Your chances of incapacitating somebody in a moving vehicle away from you like that is very small. So even if legally justified, I wouldn't recommend taking those last shots. Final officer here, as she gets out, I love that she got away from the vehicle. I think that was really wise given the circumstances and what's going on. Then again, she's going to take a couple of shots at this guy. I understand why she would do that. I don't know that I would have shot at the moving vehicle or recommend it. But last thing here as well, we have an officer down at the end of this, and everybody kind of mills about to see what the heck is going on. This is why we say an important part of your training is your medical training, and to get some help to the officer and to get some help quickly. And that's why we say have your medical kit on your person, because the last thing in the world that you want to do is start your medical care for a partner with a sprint to your vehicle and back. And when everything you have is, oh, it's buried under 9 things in the back of my patrol cruiser, you're gonna have to do that. And that's not the way you wanna do it, which is why I run an ankle kit or a vest mounted kit for my officer friends too, and have that and the skills to use it. At the end of the day, man, tough spot to be in. And I think these officers kind of, had to just kind of eat this poop sandwich. I wish they didn't have to, but sometimes you do what you got to do to cover your ass.